Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Mustard Seed Leadership Podcast. We are on part 2 of a series called From a Hierarchical Leadership Mindset to a Servant-Based Leadership Mindset. And really the heart of this is understanding the difference between what does it mean to think in terms of hierarchies and what does it mean to think in terms of servant-based. So hierarchical thinking is a mindset that exalts itself above the people. That's a key word, above. It's actually when a leader, through exalting himself or allowing the people to exalt him, actually sets himself apart and above people. Servant-based leadership mindset is the belief that we all equal before God. Now, this is critical. Peter, who probably learned this lesson because probably his default would have been to be a hierarchical type of leader who wanted to control, enforce, and make something happen. And I believe Jesus, as he discipled Peter, taught him and modeled to him what servant-based leadership looked like. And so later Peter wrote in 1 Peter 5 and verse 6, "Humble yourselves therefore under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time." Now that's what's critical, because the grace of God is there to exalt those who humble themselves, but will oppose those who try and exalt themselves. The problem with hierarchical thinking in terms of leadership is if we try and exalt ourselves, we end up robbing the cross of its power, working against the grace of God, and rather than experiencing God's favor, we actually experience more and more of the resistance of God. So, quick recap, last week's growth statement was from lording it over to going before. We break the hierarchical model of thinking when we see ourselves as leaders, as those who go ahead, kind of the front of the arrow rather than at the top of a pyramid. So, part 2, let's look at today's growth statement, from people serving the leader to the leader serving the people. Now, worldly leadership mindset is generally that the people are there to serve the vision and to serve the needs and to serve the desires of the leader. But of course, Jesus introduced a radical kingdom concept where greatness is found in the leader as he serves the people. And Matthew 20, verses 26 to 28, Jesus says, "Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." I love the fact he didn't rebuke the disciples for wanting greatness, but rather changed the roadmap to get there. And he introduced this concept. Actually, serving people is what's going to result in the promotion and greatness in their eyes. Verse 27, "Whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." So Jesus once again uses himself as the model for servant-based leadership, not hierarchical, but rather servant-based. It's interesting, just as the Son of Man. Interesting, Jesus could have called himself the Son of God, which he was, but the Son of God would have been drawing from a place of elevation, promotion, and power, whereas the Son of Man was a place of equality with mankind. And Jesus once again chooses that as his primary title, if you want to call it that. Instead of exalting himself, he humbled himself to serve. Now, Peter learned this lesson, and I believe that's why he wrote in 1 Peter 5, 2 and 3, "Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them, not because you must, but because you're willing as God wants you to be, not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve." There's the model of leadership, eager to serve. Not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. I love this concept. Now, Jesus once again modeled this, but didn't invent it. I believe it was revealed by the Father in the Old Testament. Jesus drew it out of the Old Testament and modeled it. In fact, it speaks about it in 1 Kings 12, verses 6 and 7. It says, "Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. 'How would you advise me to answer these people?' he asked." This is a beautiful glimpse now into the elders, those people who spent time with Solomon, those people who gleaned Solomon's wisdom, were now going to answer Rehoboam. How should he lead? How should he step into this role of leadership? And in verse 7, they replied, "If today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants." Isn't that beautiful? This is the wisdom of Solomon that's come out from these elders who had served Solomon. And it's beautiful. This is the revelation from the Father. If as the leader today, if you serve the people now willingly, they will always serve you into the future. This is the wisdom that these elders learned from Solomon. When a leader lovingly serves the people will willingly serve the leader. Sadly, Rehoboam didn't listen. He fell back onto a traditional model of lording it over the people. As a result, the people rebelled and he lost most of his kingdom. Just Because I began to reflect on this, if I go way back 20 odd years when we had the privilege of planting a church, we were meeting in a junior school hall, which of course meant there was a lot of work to be done. Sweeping the floors, setting up the chairs, setting up the sound equipment, tea stations, all of that. And of course then there were the toilets. Now this was a junior school and this was a Sunday, which means no cleaning has happened over the last couple of days. And as you can imagine, some of those toilets were like something out of a horror movie. And of course, my desire was as quickly as possible, let's hand over this responsibility. But it's as if every time I wanted to, I was reminded of those same words again. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Now, I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet because I think it was the Lord's dealing, keeping me in that job over and over with gloves, bucket, and plunger. But the beauty of it now, 20 years later, is by God's grace, we've got incredible volunteer serving teams who actually volunteer and are happy to do those horrible jobs. The point is simply this: when the leader chooses to serve the people will choose to willingly serve a leader and his vision. A couple of honesty questions just very quickly then. Are you as a leader really serving the people you lead, or are you expecting them to serve you? And would the people you lead agree with your answer? Just take a moment to reflect on that. Are you really serving them, or deep in your heart, because it always starts with the heart, are you actually expecting the people just to be serving you? Secondly, what are some practical adjustments that you could make to your leadership to serve people more? Sometimes it's even the small gestures, even it's the little things sometimes where people want to see in the heart of a leader a willingness to serve and not a sense of entitlement that they deserve to be served. Even small adjustments can produce a great result. And then thirdly, think back on a leader who has had a big impact on your life. I bet you'll discover that they were a servant leader. I bet you if you look at their lives, you'll realize they were serving you in ways. What can you learn from them, and how can you emulate that? So here's the challenge: from people serving the leader to the leader serving the people. This is a deeply entrenched mindset that for many, we're going to have to find it, take it captive, and transform it from a worldly-based system of leadership to kingdom leadership. Never forget, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. Positioning yourself as the servant is the best way to position yourself for God's promotion. May this lesson go deep in our hearts. Servant leaders, let's lead as Jesus has called us to. Hope it's helpful. Hope to see you again next week. God bless, and bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Remember, if you'd like the notes that come along with this episode or any one of our past episodes, you can visit outlookchurch.co.za/mustardseed leadership, where you can see all our past episodes, all the resources and notes that go along with this. Until next time, keep growing.